Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Hey there, thanks so much for checking in with me. I am thrilled to be with you here today. As always, I'm pumped and ready to share some more valuable information with you that you can start applying right now to your practice and to your life. And with me today is a success coach. This guy has a background in sales, and I think that you're going to find that his transition from the sales world into really the business coaching world it made all the sense in the world, and he had so many things that he can share with us that he learned during that experience. His name is Jim Akers, and he's had a lifelong desire to be the best and focuses on helping people get success right. Now, getting success right means understanding and prioritizing the roles we play and aligning our time, talent, and money with our most important roles in order to increase the quality of our impact on our family, our work, and our communities. He graduated from Washington State University, and he holds an MBA from Pepperdine University. He started his career in sales, where he won numerous sales awards with Northwestern Mutual Life, Owens Corning Fiberglass, and International Paper. Mr. Akers was one of the youngest group vice presidents in International Paper history when he led a $1 billion business with over 1,200 employees. He's the author of 3 books, including his latest, Tape Breakers, Maximize Your Impact with the People You Love, Teams You Lead, and Causes That Stir Your Heart, which was number 1 on the new release list on Amazon. After 25 years in senior corporate leadership, he took the opportunity to pursue his love of coaching, speaking, and writing, and formed J.D. Akers and Associates. Please welcome Jim Akers.
Richard, great to be with you. And that's a wonderful introduction. I think you read it just as I wrote it, and I think my mom is probably going to applaud at that. So thanks very much.
Well, good. We always want to make mom proud. That's one of
Absolutely.
Well, is there anything you want to add to that, or did we knock that out of the park?
I think you knocked it out of the park. So thanks for that background. Just terrific to be here with you and your audience. It's a great audience. I've listened to your show, a lot of energy, and just fun to be here.
Well, we're excited as well. So in looking over your background, you and I have something in common, and that's that we are both former salespeople. Looks like you did it a lot longer than I did, but I know I learned a lot of skills in my selling career. So would you mind sharing with us some of the skills you developed and how they've really translated into the bigger picture of success?
Well, it's interesting because coming out of school, I had no idea, desire, or interest in selling as a career, but everyone kind of pointed me in that way. And it's a really incredible skill-building opportunity. And I'd sum it up really, Richard, as the art of influence, right? Influencing people to take action. How do you take a great product, your expertise, knowledge, and helping people solve problems they couldn't solve on their own? So I think tied to success, in a really powerful way, I think whatever profession you're pursuing, your ability to apply that knowledge to a prospect's problems. We might even call it a pain in your world, requires influence. And everybody sells. We all sell. And it really was a great career for me. It's only bounded by what's legal, moral, and ethical. So it's really a fun place to be, to discover, who you are, your ability to communicate with people, your ability to influence people, and really to solve their problem and provide them a great service.
Yeah, I think you hit on some key things there. Really, I found when I was selling solutions to problems. And the more intimately I could understand what was going on with a person and the real problems they were having. And I call it pain points on this show, but sometimes I think our listeners start thinking, what do you mean, back pain? Like pain? No, those can be the literal pain points that people come in with. But yeah, whatever in that person's life is not functioning or in their business is not functioning. And if there's a way that you can come in and provide a service that makes that person's life better, then I guess you're right. It's not really selling, it's influencing.
It is influencing. If we're out asking questions, whether it be of our neighbor, a client, anybody, there's things going on in their world. And potentially you have a solution for them if you're listening carefully enough. And I think that's really what the art of selling is. And in your world as a chiropractor and anybody providing that type of service, it all begins with a question. How are you doing? And then listening intently for how you might be able to be of service.
One of the things in my experience I found is that people don't like to be told. They want to kind of think it through themselves and arrive at their own conclusions. And that's how I feel personally, and that's how it is with my 3-year-old. She doesn't like to be told, But
Yep.
Could you maybe go through some of the strategies, how you sit down with a person and lead them to draw their own conclusion that ultimately makes the sale and gets them closer to their solution?
Well, I think the one thing is your ability to ask open-ended questions. Probably by nature, and we learn it really as a young age. You mentioned your 3-year-old. We ask questions that require yes and no answers. And it becomes an interrogation if you ask those types of questions repeatedly. Ask 3 of those questions, get a yes or no, and the conversation is generally over. So I think it starts, Richard, with asking really good open-ended questions. I think in your arena, even the arenas I've been in, is tell me how you're doing. Tell me the things that are going on in your world and what's your biggest problem right now? What's your biggest area of concern? Are really pretty good open-ended type questions to begin the dialogue. And then once they start eliciting the response, you can continue to draw that out and drill into the more specific things. I think in your world, I think about going and visiting my chiropractor. Doug will always ask me, what hurts? Tell me how you feel. How was our last visit? What worked? What didn't work? Just to elicit a dialogue. And I think those are the places that you have to go.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think it's especially important. I'm always talking about the person's pain concern, but as a practitioner, I think we're always looking at the larger picture, especially in chiropractic, because we're looking for the cause of what's going on, and there's a whole body approach or a whole person approach, and it's really difficult to take a person's issue and just say, well, it's knee pain, and I have to look at it in isolation. I really try to put it in the context of the larger picture of that person and what their history is like and their struggles in life and things like that. I tend to find that I get a better result if I analyze, the whole person that way. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're talking about as well in your world.
I think that is incredibly powerful. And I think the thing is about selling is it's an area of trust. Trust is built on 2 qualities, character and competency. They're coming to you because they believe that you're competent. They're going to share with you in depth about their problems and what's going on if they feel you have character and you really care about them. People really want to do business with people they like, everything being equal. Everything being unequal, they still try to do business with people they like.
I'm so glad you said that because trust is a huge factor. And I think, especially, I guess if you're buying a car, you do want to trust the salesperson who's selling it to you. But when it's your health, I think that health really elevates that, the stature of that relationship to a higher place. And yeah, absolutely vital that we understand that there's that connection and our skills go along with that. But skills are just part of that picture.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Well, I hear a lot of people talk about, what's the secret to being successful? And there was even a movie 2 years ago, called The Secret. Are there really secrets?
Well, I'm not sure they're secrets, but I certainly think there's a lot of principles. The first place is really hard work. I think hard work's really important. The best people I've ever known in whatever field, leadership, sales, athletics, tended to master their craft by working hard at it. I don't think there's any shortcuts, but I would probably highlight, Richard, a couple things that I write about in my book, Tape Breakers. And the first one is really understanding your why. What do you do what you do? Why is about purpose, and your purpose is that reason why you do something every single day that motivates you. You've got a young family. I'm sure you get up every morning because you love your family, and they're a motivator for you. And that's where it starts. So I think the purpose piece ends up, what are those most important roles in your life? Do you really understand those things? And the second thing I think is an incredible secret is, and not necessarily secret, we just avoid it, is who's your coach? Who do you surround yourself with that pushes you to learn and grow? You teach at a chiropractic college. In the absence of you doing that, nobody learns that trade. No one learns the art of doing that really well. And then I think finally I would say is, do you have a plan? Our most precious resource is our time. Our most valuable asset is our mind. So everyone has the same amount of time, but what differentiates us is how we spend it. And I see really successful people are very guarded in terms of how they manage and allocate their time.
Well, we are going to link to your book in our show notes page for sure. And yeah, I think time is a huge factor that maybe people don't realize that's bled away from them in a million different ways. And time is just one piece of everything that you're talking about. I notice that when people want to make a change, it almost seems overwhelming. How do I find the time and how do I even begin? So what steps do you have to really break it down for a person to kickstart that process?
Well, when I'm working with folks, one of the things that I do is I ask them about their schedule in terms of, professional, how much time do you allocate there? Growth, personal growth, how much do you allocate there? And those two areas become critical. I've seen people allow their jobs to absorb them 60, 70, 80 hours a week and then lose everything that they think was really important to them, right? Family, friends, everything else, because they thought that career was so important. And my experience has taught me, and I'm now at an age I can say that at the ripe old age of 57, is that if you think that you're going to be missed in your career, stick your hand in a bucket of water and pull it out, because that's about how long and how much you'll be missed. People just fill in around you. So I think that the essence of time is, am I dedicating my time towards the people who I most want to be remembered by and towards the things I most want to be remembered for? That really starts to force you to think about who I say yes to and what I say yes to.
I'm thinking about what you're saying there because I really, it's so powerful. It's counterintuitive. We're taught at such a young age that not only are we very unique, but we matter a whole lot. And it's a bit of a reality, a slap in the face to realize that maybe that's not so true. Maybe we won't be as missed, if we leave a place as we think we would be. And I know I've seen it in my professional career. Great people I've worked with have moved on to other things, and it doesn't take very long before they're gone. It's not that you don't miss them, but when they're not a part of your everyday experience, it is kind of surprising how quickly that goes away.
Yeah, I think that's been my experience, and I've seen a lot. I had some great mentors that I loved working for example, and they left, and you're exactly right. They were missed, and I missed them. But in a matter of months, you miss them more personally for the relationship than you do from the perspective of, what they're doing from an additive perspective to your career.
I'll tell you what it's done for me is it's been very freeing in a sense. I feel liberated because I've realized there's not a whole lot that matters. And there are things that matter to me or my family or maybe to my boss, hitting deadlines and things like that. But really I've decided to take more risks in life because I realize, hey, not a whole lot of this matters, and tomorrow everyone's going to forget, so you might as well go for it and, do what it is you think you need to do instead of waiting for what you think is a better time.
There's never a good time to start something that's new or different. So you look at a change, and it only takes, 15 minutes a day. I had somebody tell me the other day that they hadn't read a book since they graduated high school, and that had been 25 years. And then I told him, I said, do you realize that if you read just 15 minutes a day, you could complete 30 books in a year? 15 minutes a day, 30 books a year. If somebody read 30 books on any topic, they'd be an expert probably in that topic.
Oh, yeah.
So 15 minutes a day, it doesn't take a whole lot to affect a really positive change. You just have to get out of the cycle of some of the stuff that you don't need to do or don't want to do.
So I'm guessing that when you coach people, and they're looking at their lives saying, I can't find 15 minutes. What are some of the things you tell people how can they go find that time?
Well, the first thing a lot of times folks focus on is, tell me all this stuff. How much TV do you watch? Tell me what your typical routine is. And when you get into a couple of those areas, you find how much time that is wasted that could be applied to a particular problem, to reading, to anything else. And so that's where I really zero in. I'll have people at times, take a week. I know you think you don't waste any time, but just in 15 or 30-minute increments, write down what you're doing. And then we end up looking at what they've done, and they find out, God, I just didn't realize I had an hour and a half here. I have 2 hours here that I could have done something different. And then it's changing that habit and saying, you need to say no to these things so that you can fit in exercise, that you can fit in the reading and the personal development, and those types of things becomes really important. I'll give you a really practical example. I have a younger son who just finished chartered financial analyst process, which 3 legs of that, Richard, and it takes 600 hours per leg probably they recommend for studying. And when we looked at his schedule, he became very disciplined about how he marked certain things out on his calendar, and he did that while he was working full time. So it can be done, and it just takes that choice of saying, I'm going to apply this amount of time to these problems or these opportunities, and have somebody you surround yourself with that keeps you on task.
I'm glad you mentioned the word discipline, because I think that, there are all kinds of books out there of how to do really anything, or you can go on YouTube and see how to do things. So it's not that we don't have access to the knowledge. It really comes down to the discipline to make these things happen in our life, and mastering that, I think, for all of us, is that empowering piece.
Oh, it is. And I read something years ago, and I subscribed to this. I probably rejected it at first, but it said life is really a series of yes and no answers. You say all day long yes and no to certain things. And if you boil it down to that simple, take a exercise. I either say yes to that 30 minutes of exercise today, or I say no. But I get the choice of saying yes or no. I get to say yes or no to the donut that's sitting there, in the coffee room, or whatever the case may be. But we do get to say yes and no. And if you boil it down and make it that simple, it's helped me and my clients tremendously by just asking, is this a yes or no? Yeah, it is. Which way am I going? Which way am I going today?
Well, I want to talk about another factor in success, and that is the ability to communicate ideas. And you're an author and a speaker, and obviously you are very clearly gifted at speaking, but not everyone is, and especially in chiropractic, I think that we don't realize that that's really pivotal. And our key to be successful in business is our ability to communicate effectively with patients. So, what are some of the strategies we can use to communicate more effectively?
Well, the first thing I would say is keep it simple. I think a lot of times when we're trying to think about how we craft or communicate a message, we think it has to be something tremendously profound. But the beauty really is in simplicity. So I think a great place to start is to what I call an elevator speech. In 30 or 60 seconds, can you communicate what you do and how someone benefits from what you do? I run into folks all the time, and you think about this. If I'm a chiropractor and somebody meets me and I tell them I'm a chiropractor, they're probably going to have an opinion, either positive or negative, probably not neutral. So in 30 or 60 seconds, can I present why what I do is not only unique, but provides value? And I call it an elevator speech, because typically if you're an elevator, you may have 30 or 60 seconds standing next to somebody. And if you want them to be a client, they're going to step out of that elevator and they're gone. Did you make an impact or influence in that moment at all? And I think that, Richard, just takes some practice. Craft it out, write it out, deliver it to your wife, deliver it to your spouse, husband, deliver it to a friend, deliver it to a fellow professional, and say, hey, what do you think? Until you have it to the point that if somebody asks you what you do in 30 to 60 seconds, you can nail it. That's the first place I would start.
Yeah, that's a great starting point, and I would maybe even say once you've perfected it and you have, run it past your peers, then cut it in half. Because I find that attention spans are so incredibly low today that you may not have that full 30 seconds that you thought you had.
You mean Twitter, only 140 characters, and you've got to understand everything about me in that amount of time? That just isn't fair, is it?
No, it's not. And I can see it in people's faces. I'm talking to them about something or trying to make kind of a point, and that point, takes a couple of, you have to lay the groundwork in the background, and it's just not there. They're tuning out thinking about their laundry. And so I make a couple of impact statements, news bites, if you will, and hope that those resonate with folks. But I think you're absolutely right. Getting clear and concise in our communication is a great way to start things. Anything else we should do once we've done that?
Work on the questioning skills. You say you only have 30 seconds. You're right. If you are able to ask really good open-ended questions that allow somebody to think you care about them, they'll give you more time. They'll give you more attention.
Well, you've worked with a lot of folks, obviously. What are the average turnaround times that you're seeing for people? Can people change their course quickly?
Yeah, I think that they can. I think that one thing that allows people to change it the most quickly is getting your purpose understood. Clarity drives out randomness and allows you to really focus on your highest payoff activities. What is it you're really trying to accomplish? I think that that's probably the number one thing. And the second thing would be build a plan. People think they have a plan. But most time when I ask somebody, tell me what your plan is, what's the objective, what's the measurable, how are you going to get there? It's not nearly as clear as they think it is. Going back to your point on communication, whatever you think it is, cut it in half, get simple, get focused. And I would also tell you the other thing is surround yourself with good people. One, people that tell you the truth, and second, people that complement your weaknesses.
Yeah. Was it Jim Rome who said you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with?
I think that he was the one that said that, and I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I also want to talk about something else you just mentioned, and that is getting clarity. I heard a speaker one time say this a while back, but he said, we seem to have no problem with if we want to go to Florida, we put that into our GPS, and then we know that we need to go south, and we follow all those directions. And if you were to ask someone where you headed and they said Florida and then they went north, we'd know things were a little crazy. But it's strange in our lives that people will say, oh, I want this in my life, but they appear to be going in a different direction altogether. And absolutely, whatever you have to do to gain clarity as to what your destination is, I think everything else works backwards from there.
Oh, absolutely. I think Ken Blanchard said feedback is the breakfast of champions, and we need that. So if you put a plan, surround yourself with people that have already done it. I mean, in your field, I know that the sharing of knowledge is a valuable asset, right? It's something that you trade for in exchange for getting more information and having people help you. And if you're not willing to ask for help, it's a long journey. And so you said, how quickly can you turn it around? If you don't surround yourself with people, I think that journey is a lonely one and likely doesn't end up in success.
Well, do you mind sharing with us a couple of success stories from some of your clients? I feel very empowered when I hear how someone else went out there and did it already.
Well, it's interesting you asked that question because I just had a call with a young man last week and a really talented guy. And we got to clarity for him. I focused on a couple things that I always ask people. The first question I ask him is, who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? And that gives you a sense of making decisions and spending time. And we were working, and he had a clear answer to this. Then in the midst of just a bunch of events, including getting married and starting a new business, he called and said, Jim, I'm just falling down on the job. I'm falling down at home. None of these things are working. And we went back to these questions. And what was very interesting very quickly is he had an aha moment, and he said, Jim, I'm spending time with people that are not in my 5 most important roles. And I'm spending time on things that I said 3 months ago that I was going to discard. And the beauty of it is he called last week and he closed one of the biggest deals he'd ever closed, and was essential for him to get his business off the ground. And he said it wouldn't have happened if he wouldn't have got himself refocused, because he would have missed a couple of opportunities, which, is rewarding for me, but it's not tremendously complex. It's really getting people focused on the things that they say that are important. And then probably another fun one, Richard, is I just have a guy that worked for me for a number of years. And when he calls, I know the question is really going to be simple because he's going to tell me all the things that are going on. And then I'm going to ask him one question. I'm going to say, Shad, what's your plan look like? And he goes, Jim, I know you were going to ask me that question. And I had dinner with him last week, and we got him back on track. He says, I just get myself drifting away from my core plan. So, in essence, it really boils down to those two questions. Who do you want to be remembered by? What do you want to be remembered for? And consistently making decisions that are in alignment with those two questions.
I like what you said in that last example. There's a guy, a mentor of mine, and he used to say, therefore what? And he would listen to the big long story, and then he'd say, therefore what? And that was his way of saying, what's your plan? Because we can vent or complain or make excuses or whatever.
Absolutely. Wisdom and simplicity again, right?
Exactly. Well, as chiropractors, we're also usually managing a staff and have employees. It might be one, it might be several. But what do we need to do to become good leaders?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing is you just have to simply care about people. You have to care about them professionally and personally and the things that are going on in their lives. I think the best leaders are servants. Giving them a vision that they care about and something that they want to be part of. I learned this years ago. People work for three things. They work for a leader, they'll work for a cause, they'll work for money. And I'm pretty sure if you stop paying them, they stop working. So that has you looking at yourself. Are you a leader they want to follow? And do you have a vision that's compelling to them? It's got to be more than a paycheck. And then I would say, Richard, on an execution basis, do the people who work for you know what's expected from you on the job? And if anyone asks them, could they tell you what the 2 to 3, maybe 5 top deliverables are and how to measure them? I work with folks all the time, and I ask them, what are the 3 most important things you do on your job? And there'll be this pause, and they'll say, I'm not sure. So I think that is absolutely essential. If they don't know, you're always going to be frustrated, and they're going to be frustrated because they don't know how to win on the job. And the second thing I would add is 5 to 1. 5 positive affirmations for every correction. It's proven research-wise, proven in my own work over 30 years in a senior corporate level position. When you reward people and compliment them, it opens up the avenue that you can give them feedback for correction, and it's 5 to 1. A lot of research on that topic, but those would be my top 2 suggestions.
Well, those are all actionable, and I'm taking notes as we speak, so I appreciate that. And, I think it's as for us as supervisors, we can get bogged down in a lot, all the stresses and headaches that come with owning a business and the financial issues and everything else that goes along with it. And I know I'm guilty of this as well. You can sometimes forget to really put on the other hat, see it through that other person's eyes and make it important to them. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you're going to get more out of that person. And it's helping them get clear on their why. Like you said, if they can't name the top 3 most important things about their job, how can you really, expect them to be good at it?
They cannot be good at it. And they're also then looking for feedback from you. They're looking for you to say, hey, guess what? I did these 3 things. And if you know they're doing them, it opens an opportunity for you to compliment them. It also gives you the avenue to help them learn and grow, especially if they're new. You bring somebody new into the office and they're absorbing that role and you're not really sure what you want them to do. They're going to be frustrated.
Yeah, I've run into that as well. And unfortunately, with the training on the job environment that a lot of chiropractors unfortunately have going on, they're just too busy to provide a good training. And one of the things we've done is work to create a manual. And then there are training programs within that manual so that people can start getting that training that they deserve. So chiropractors who are listening, make sure you take the time to, train that person and make everything clear, those expectations to that employee.
Absolutely. I think it's that measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, exactly. It's true in the construction industry. It sounds like it's probably true for us as well.
It is, yes.
Well, if we haven't already covered everything, what can our listeners do tomorrow to really start changing things in their office. And our audience is made up of two different types of listeners. You have the brand new docs who are just getting going, and then the people who've been out there a while, but maybe things aren't going the right way.
Well, I think in an office environment, first, what is your vision? And have you been able to communicate that to everybody in your office? Who do you serve and why do you serve them? I would imagine, I don't think your business is any different than anybody else's business. People return because they're cared for. And if you're trying to build a client, you want everybody in your office to be able to understand that that's the most important thing that we do. And not only you as a doctor providing the care, but there's somebody doing billing and there's somebody that greets them when they come in. What is that environment that you're creating that makes it something that people want to come in and be part of? And I can feel it when I walk into an office, whether it be a chiropractic office or a doctor's office or, you go into insurance, AAA, any of those. You get a sense whether people really care about what they're doing. So that'd be the number one thing that if I wanted to be successful, I would do that. What's my vision? And then going back to our prior answer, make sure that those people know what's expected. The last thing I would toss in there, Richard, is I get somebody to walk into your office that can give you an evaluation. That they walk in and maybe nobody knows them and they walk in as a new client and they'll grade folks. How was I greeted? How did I feel upon that greeting, et cetera? Really powerful to be able to get that feedback and share with folks.
Yeah, that's great. In my experience, I used to work for AMC Theaters and they would send in the secret shopper. That's exactly what they would do. They would rate their movie-going experience from beginning to end, and we'd get a full report. And you did not want to be named on that report as someone who did not do a good job. But, it shouldn't be your mom or your wife or your husband. It should be, somebody that it's that everyone doesn't know. Maybe you can know as the owner, but everyone else, the staff, and it should not know. Great idea. I love that suggestion. Well, I want to shift right now and talk about the bigger picture of success. This can be success in your life, not necessarily professional career, could be personal. And you've had a lot of success, obviously, but we learn so much more, I think, from the obstacles and challenges that we've overcome. Do you mind sharing one of those with us and what you did to overcome it and the lessons you learned?
Oh, not at all. Richard, you mentioned it earlier about taking more risks and being willing to fail. I can't tell you that was something that came easy to me. Nobody likes to do that. But interestingly enough, after I probably sum it up, how do you get comfortable being uncomfortable? Willingness to make mistakes and know that failing is necessary to find it. The biggest challenge recently was writing my latest book, Tape Breakers. What had happened to me was I had just met a significant goal to retire by the age of 55. So I like to call it more I was planning on redeploying myself, which I had a focus on doing, and moving towards helping people raise their personal and professional impact. I had a good plan and what I needed to do, but I was struggling putting it all together. So what I did was I really followed the advice that I was trying to give everyone else. I got to the point that I hired a literary coach. I went out and hired a coach. Said, listen, I've got the ideas, I've got a structure, I think I know what I'm doing. And I hired a coach who ultimately became my publisher. And the lesson that I learned there really was reinforced, is that when you take on something new and challenging, you can speed the process and improve the results by engaging coach and expertise that you don't have on your own. And I didn't like to do it. I didn't necessarily want to do it, but it was one of those things that I had to keep struggling with this for another 16, 18 months, or I get this done in the next 4 months. Which do you prefer?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the struggle for, those of us who are pretty able to do things and can figure out a lot of things on our own, and we could all probably be good at a lot of things, but does time allow for that? And I think you're absolutely right. It's so much better just to put the money out there and get that coaching and really compress down the amount of time it's going to take to get things done.
Absolutely. And it's turned into something that not only reinforced, but it's allowed me to go out and not only get coaches in some other areas, but push myself to, I'm not going to die by trying some of this stuff. I'm only going to get better at these things. So if I'm truly committed to making a difference in people's lives, and I've got people out there that can teach me and show me, I would be foolish to say that I'm offering this advice to everybody else, but it doesn't apply to me. I am unique and different. I'm not. I'm just the same as everybody else, just trying to figure it out as I go along.
Well, who are your personal heroes?
Well, my first would be my father, who passed away 13 years ago. He is actually the story, the first chapter of my book, An Unlikely Source of Clarity. But my dad, Richard, grew up at the age of 25, he had his sister. He lost a sister, a brother. His mom had a nervous breakdown, and his father abandoned his family by the time he was 25. And also his first wife dropped dead after giving birth to my sister, my half-sister. So that was his life before the age of 25.
Oh, my goodness.
So to watch what I learned from him in terms of playing the cards you're dealt has been more than an inspiration. You know, I almost get choked up talking about it because he had every reason to abandon everything that he was doing. There was no reason for him to live out a life that really had a great influence on his family. So he would be tops on my list.
Wow. A lot there. Yeah. It's a different day and age now, but I'll tell you what, the things that are, when people think that they have a lot on their plate and life is rough, stories like those really show us, no, there was a generation that came before that dealt with a whole lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's where that work ethic thing came from. I mentioned before. Sometimes you just have to go to work.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about this earlier. Those are habits and routines and affirmations, things like that. Which do you do those, and how do you do them, and what's a typical day for you look like?
My typical day is a schedule that falls into three buckets. I work on business development work. I work on content development because I'm a writer, speaker, and coach. And then I have personal development. And I look at my calendar on a weekly basis and I mark those things out. And one of the things I'm really working on, Richard, is an idea of focus. I've done a lot of research in this area, and it says that we can't stay totally focused on something for more than 60 to 90 minutes at a time. And in this world of electronic interruption, we typically pick up our phone, go to social media within every 90 seconds. So what I try to do is I stick to that schedule. I set a timer. So if I'm writing or I'm working on a project, I try not to let anything interrupt me for those 60 to 90 minutes that I have scheduled. So what it allows me to do is finish the writing, work on programs where I have speaking engagements, and also prepare properly for the coaching clients that I'm working with.
Well, we are sadly running out of time on this interview. We do have a few final thoughts before we let you go. Do you have a favorite book? And we're going to mention yours, but besides yours, favorite book you'd like to recommend to Mojo Nation?
Well, it's a very personal one, but the best book, and I keep it close to my desk all the time, is called Good, Great, and God's Eyes by Chip Ingram. Is probably at the top of my list.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Great mentor of mine. If you put your family first, you'll never be disappointed.
Excellent. I love that. Well, what's the best way for people to reach you and find out more about your books and how to get them?
Well, my website is jimdakers, AKERS.com. And I also, Richard, have an incredible planning tool that I'd like to share with folks. All they need to do is text Chiro, all capital letters, CHIRO, today's date 1121, to 33444, and I'll send them one of my impact planning tools, which is 6 steps to your best year ever.
That sounds great. Well, we will link to that in the show notes, as well as your books and how to get in touch with you, and then everything else we talked about in this interview. Mr. Jim Akers, thank you so much for carving out some time out of your day to spend with us and our listeners.
Richard, it's been great to be with you. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.